I never thought I'd ever point a shotgun at anyone in my life, let alone at a group of HOA agents wearing bright orange vests and smug grins. But that morning, as the Pacific wind whipped across my property and the waves crashed behind me, I realized something. They weren't just after my beach cabin. They were after my freedom. I bought that cabin 15 years ago. A little two-bedroom, cedar-shingled home perched on a small strip of private beach just north of Monterey, California. It was my escape from city chaos. No traffic, no bosses, no noise. Just me, the sea, and the occasional seal popping up to stare. When I first moved in, there wasn't even an HOA in sight. The nearest community was a 5-minute drive away. A cluster of shiny new houses built on land that used to be wild dunes. I watched them rise slowly, like a cancer spreading across the coast, one new cul-de-sac at a time. They called it Ocean Dunes Estates. I called it the beginning of the end. For years, I lived peacefully. My mornings started with black coffee on the deck and ended with sunset whiskey in a rocking chair. The sound of the tide against the pilings was my music. Then, about a year ago, a letter arrived, one that would change everything. Dear Mr. Lawson, we are writing to inform you that Ocean Dunes Estates has recently expanded its jurisdictional boundary, which now includes the properties along Coastal Road, including yours. As such, you are required to comply with HOA bylaws effective immediately. I laughed when I first read it. I honestly thought it was junk mail. But then I saw the signature. Patricia Reams, HOA president. I'd seen her type before. The kind of woman who made you feel like you'd parked in the wrong spot just by existing. The next week they started showing up. Clipboard warriors with fake smiles, taking pictures of my porch, my truck, even my old fishing boat that leaned slightly to one side. I came outside one morning and found a neon pink violation notice stapled to my gate. It said my shed color did not comply with community aesthetic standards. My shed that I built 10 years before their damned HOA existed. So I did what any sane man would do. I called them. Patricia herself picked up. Mr. Lawson, she said, her tone coated in honey but sharp underneath. We're simply enforcing uniformity. It's what keeps property values high. I don't belong to your association, I said, trying to keep calm. You can't enforce anything on my land. She chuckled, that kind of laugh that makes your blood run hot. Oh, but you will, Mr. Lawson. Once the paperwork finalizes, you'll see we have full authority. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. The weeks that followed felt like a siege. I started getting letters every few days, threats of fines, notices of unauthorized structures, even warnings. Then came the day that broke the last thread of my patience. It was a foggy Saturday morning. I was fixing a loose plank on my deck when I heard engines. 3 white trucks rolling down the dirt road, each stamped with Ocean Dunes HOA Compliance Division. Out stepped 4 people. Patricia leading the charge, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on, lips pursed like she was about to taste something sour. Good morning, Mr. Lawson, she called out. We're here to conduct an inspection. Inspection? I repeated. You got a warrant? She smiled. We don't need one. This is a community matter. No, I said, standing tall. This is my property, not yours. One of the men behind her started walking toward my shed. Sir, we're just here to... That's when I snapped. I went inside, grabbed my old Winchester from the wall rack, unloaded, but they didn't know that, and walked back out slow. The ocean wind whipped my jacket open as I racked it with a loud click that sliced through the fog. I growled, you're trespassing. Patricia froze, eyes widening. clipboard trembling just slightly. "Mr. Lawson, there's no need for—" "Off my land." They backed off, whispering to each other, faces pale. Within minutes, the trucks reversed and vanished up the road, leaving dust and tire marks behind. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding like thunder. I didn't want violence. I just wanted peace. But I knew it wasn't over. People like Patricia didn't retreat. They regrouped. And next time, they wouldn't come with clipboards. They'd come with lawyers. That night, I sat on my porch under the cold moonlight, shotgun across my knees, wondering how far I'd have to go to protect what was mine. The waves sounded different, restless, angry, as if the ocean itself could feel what was coming.
I didn't sleep that night. Every time the waves crashed against the rocks, I half expected headlights to appear again, another convoy of HOA trucks, or worse, sheriff cruisers. By sunrise, my coffee had gone cold, and I was still sitting on that same porch, shotgun across my lap, watching seagulls circle above the fog. I knew what was coming next. People like Patricia didn't scare easily. They got even. Sure enough, 2 days later, a thick envelope showed up in my mailbox. It was from Reams, Holbrook and Partners, a local law firm. The letter inside was written in perfect legalese, cold, polished, and dripping with entitlement. Dear Mr. Lawson, pursuant to the recorded annexation documents of Ocean Dunes Estates Phase 3, your property now falls under the HOA's jurisdiction. Your refusal to comply with HOA inspections constitutes a violation of Articles 5 and 9 of the Community Covenant. You are hereby fined $1,250 for obstruction and failure to comply. Continued resistance will result in legal action and potential property seizure. I read it twice. Then I laughed. The kind of hollow laugh you make when you realize the system isn't built for people like you. They were playing dirty, and they thought I'd roll over. That night I called my neighbor, Eddie, a retired contractor who'd lived a few lots down before the HOA started expanding. Eddie was the kind of guy who wore denim shirts even to church and could fix anything with duct tape and stubbornness. "Eddie," I said, pacing across my cabin, "they're trying to claim my land. Got some law firm involved now." He sighed. "They did the same to the Johnsons. Told them they couldn't park their RV on their own lot. Next thing they knew, the HOA had slapped a lien on their house." "A lien?" I asked, stunned. "Yep. Sold their place in a court auction for half what it was worth." I went silent before. The next morning, I went into town to see attorney Jane Morris, a local property lawyer who'd handled cases against HOAs before. Her office smelled like old books and fresh coffee, my kind of place. She adjusted her glasses as she read through the documents I brought. She murmured. "This is what's called a soft annexation. They've expanded their territory and recorded it with the county without the consent of the existing owners." "Can they do that?" I asked. "They can try, but it's not legal unless you agreed in writing, which you didn't." "So what do I do?" She looked up at me, a small grin forming. "You fight back, but it won't be cheap." The next few weeks turned into a nightmare of letters, legal calls, and constant surveillance. They started sending inspectors to drive by my property. Slow, deliberate passes, cameras in hand. Once, I caught one parked across the road with binoculars aimed straight at my deck. I walked up, knocked on his window, and said, "You bird watching or just creeping?" He mumbled something about documentation for records and sped off. Then came the fines. $250 for unauthorized exterior paint, $400 for improper waste disposal, which turned out to be driftwood stacked behind my shed, $600 for non-compliant fencing. All totaled, nearly $5,000 in bogus charges. Each envelope had the same signature at the bottom: Patricia Reams, HOA president. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about control. A week later, I found a notice nailed to my gate again. But this time, it wasn't a violation. It was a hearing notice. Mandatory appearance, HOA board meeting, Ocean Dunes Community Center, Thursday, 6 p.m. Failure to attend will result in escalation to county enforcement. They wanted me to come to their turf, to stand in front of their board and beg. I crumpled the paper in my hand and tossed it into the fire pit. But later that night, I realized maybe I should go. Not to bow down, but to look them in the eye and remind them who they were dealing with. Thursday came fast. The community center sat at the heart of Ocean Dunes, all polished wood, glass doors, and the faint smell of disinfectant and arrogance. As I walked in, heads turned. People whispered. Some avoided eye contact altogether. Patricia sat at the head of a long table, flanked by her board, 5 people in matching navy blazers, papers neatly stacked in front of them. "Dear Mr. Lawson," she said smoothly, "glad you could join us. Let's make this quick." I stood across from her, hands in my jacket pockets. "Make it quick, then." She adjusted her glasses, pretending to read from her papers. "We've documented multiple violations, including threats made against HOA officials." "Threats?" I said. "When you trespassed on my property?" Her smile didn't waver. "Our community laws allow property access for inspection purposes." "Your community," I said slowly, "ends where my land begins." The room went silent. Even the air conditioner seemed to stop humming. Then she leaned forward. "You're not helping yourself, Mr. Lawson. We can make this easy. Sign the membership agreement, pay your dues, and this all goes away." I stared at her. "You're blackmailing me into joining your HOA? It's called compliance." I couldn't help but chuckle. "You picked the wrong man for that." Her face hardened. "Then you'll be hearing from our lawyers." I turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Everyone was watching. Patricia's board members looked uneasy, their leader's confidence starting to crack. So I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You folks think you can bully me off my land? Try me. I've been here before you, and I'll be here after you're gone." And I walked out. Outside, the wind howled against the parking lot. I looked out toward the distant line of the ocean, dark, endless, untamed. The fight had just begun. But I wasn't alone anymore. I had proof, a lawyer, and a fire inside me that no fine could extinguish. For a few days after that tense board meeting, things went quiet. Too quiet. The ocean breeze still rolled in, and gulls still circled the gray sky, but there was an edge to the silence, like the calm before a hurricane. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, I woke to the sound of trucks, engines idling just past my gate. I stepped out onto the porch, coffee in hand, and saw 2 white pickup trucks with Ocean Dunes HOA logos parked on the side of the road. 2 men in safety vests were hammering stakes into the ground, right along my property line. I set the mug down and walked towards them. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" I asked. One of them looked up, clearly startled but trying to stay professional. "Sir, we've been instructed to mark the boundary for a new walking trail. HOA initiative." I frowned. "You mean on my land?" He shifted uncomfortably. "We have approval from the board." "No, you don't," I said flatly. "Get those stakes out." He hesitated. "Sir, we're just following orders." That's when I noticed one of them had a body camera clipped to his vest. They were recording me, waiting for me to explode, to give them something to twist against me. I took a deep breath, turned around, and walked back to my cabin. But inside, I was fuming. They were pushing boundaries, literally. That afternoon, I met with Attorney Morris again. She reviewed the photos I'd taken of the stakes and shook her head. They're trying to build a case for implied consent. If they use your land without you formally objecting in writing, they could argue you didn't contest their jurisdiction. Implied consent, I repeated bitterly. So if I don't stop them, they can take it. Pretty much, she said. We need to file a cease and desist and alert the county clerk immediately. She drafted the papers that same day, and I delivered them myself to the HOA office. A sterile, glass-walled building that reeked of air freshener and arrogance. Patricia wasn't there, but her assistant, Diane, took the envelope with a forced smile. Consider this official notice, I said before leaving. Any further trespassing and we go to court. Her fake smile vanished. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was Eddie. Turn on Channel 7, he said, voice tight. I flipped on the TV, and there it was. A local news report titled, Man Threatens HOA Workers with Firearm During Property Dispute. They had my name, my address blurred, and even a photo of my cabin. My stomach dropped. The footage showed me holding my shotgun from that night. They'd clipped it, edited it, and painted me like a lunatic. I could almost hear Patricia's smug voice behind the scenes. She's framing me, I muttered. The next few days were chaos. I got hate mail. People driving by slowed down just to stare. Someone threw a beer can at my mailbox. Even the sheriff showed up one morning just to check things out. He was polite, but the message was clear. I was being watched. I tried calling the news station to demand a correction, but they claimed they'd received verified footage from a community source. Community source, right. I decided to hit back. I called a friend from high school, Marty, who ran a small YouTube channel called Civilian Watchdog. He covered local corruption, homeowner abuse, and small-town power games. When I told him what happened, he said, "Oh man, this is gold. They messed with the wrong guy." He came over with his camera crew that weekend. We filmed a full walkthrough of the property, showing the stakes, the bogus fines, the letters, and the doctored footage. By the time we uploaded the video, titled HOA Bullies Caught Framing Property Owner, the truth they didn't want you to see, it had over 200,000 views in 24 hours. The tide was turning. But Patricia didn't back off. The next week, I received a summons. They were suing me for defamation and threatening HOA staff. When I showed the papers to Jane, she just sighed. This is a scare tactic. They know it won't hold up in court, but they're hoping to drain you. Well, I said, they're not the only ones who can play hardball. That weekend, I went digging through my late father's old documents. He had built this cabin decades ago. In a dusty file folder labeled Property Line Survey 1989, I found a county deed map that clearly marked my land as outside any association boundary. It even had his handwritten note. Bought this stretch before the HOA was formed. Private title confirmed. It was my smoking gun. I scanned everything, sent copies to Jane, and waited. She called me that night, practically giddy. This is gold, Lawson. With this, we can file for a counterclaim, property harassment, and malicious prosecution. Finally, after weeks of fear, fines, and threats, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. A few days later, the HOA trucks came again. This time, they didn't stop at the road. They pulled onto my driveway. 2 men stepping out with clipboards and cameras. I stepped onto the porch, calm but firm. Turn those trucks around, I said. Sir, we're conducting a property compliance inspection under HOA. Wrong, I cut in.
You're trespassing. You've been legally notified. Leave." They ignored me. One of them started snapping photos of my windows. I walked inside, reached behind the door, and picked up my shotgun. Didn't point it, didn't even raise it, just held it. When I stepped back out, they froze. "Take your photos and get the hell off my property," I said. One of them muttered something about calling the cops, but I didn't flinch. They left. Fast. And this time, I had my own cameras rolling.
The day the court papers arrived, the sky was blood orange, that eerie color you get when a storm's brewing off the coast. It felt like the universe knew what was coming. Patricia and her HOA had filed a full civil suit, harassment, threats, and defamation. They wanted $250,000 in damages and, get this, ownership transfer of the beach property for community safety. They weren't just after my reputation anymore. They wanted the land itself. I sat on my porch, papers spread across the table, and whispered to myself, "You picked the wrong man to mess with." That night, Jane came over with a thick folder. She said, "I had a feeling they'd try this," she said, "so I've been pulling records." Inside were pages of HOA meeting transcripts, emails, and property filings, all public documents, but no one ever looked through them. And what we found was ugly. Turns out Patricia had been quietly approving maintenance funds for community upkeep, but the money was being rerouted into a private contracting company owned by her brother-in-law. Worse, the HOA had been trying to expand their jurisdiction down the coastline, targeting older, privately owned cabins like mine to acquire for public access. It wasn't just about me. It was a land grab. And now we had proof. The next few days were a blur of meetings, notarized statements, and late-night calls. Marty, the YouTuber, released a follow-up video titled "Exposed: HOA Scandal Bigger Than Anyone Thought. Corruption at Ocean Dunes." The views explode. Comments poured in. Other homeowners from nearby neighborhoods started sharing their own horror stories. Illegal fines, backdoor land deals, intimidation. Patricia's name was everywhere. And by the end of the week, the local news picked it up. I'll never forget the headline: HOA president under fire for misuse of funds and property abuse allegations. I poured myself a drink that night, sat by the window, and for the first time in months, I smiled. But it wasn't over. Not yet. 2 days later, I received an email from Jane. Court date confirmed, Monday, 9 a.m., County Courthouse. Bring your deed, survey maps, and all video evidence. I replied, "I'll be there. Every document, every second of footage." And then, as if on cue, Patricia showed up. I was outside loading my truck when her silver Lexus rolled up. She got out, immaculate as ever, blazer pressed, sunglasses reflecting the ocean. "Mr. Lawson," she called out, her voice dripping with condescension, "I'd like to speak privately." I leaned against the tailgate. "I'm all ears." She sighed dramatically. "You've made quite the mess. You could have avoided all this, the fines, the court. Community protocol doesn't apply to private property," I shot back. She crossed her arms. "You really think the court will side with you? We have decades of precedent, a board of witnesses, and video evidence showing you threatening our staff with a firearm." "Funny," I said, smirking. "I've got video evidence too, the kind that shows your staff trespassing, staking my land, and your company laundering HOA funds." For the first time, her expression cracked. She blinked. "I'd walk away now, Patricia," I said quietly, "because Monday morning, this whole town's gonna know who you really are." She turned, silent, and drove off. Monday came. I barely slept the night before. The courthouse was packed. Reporters, homeowners, even a few people from the HOA pretending to be concerned citizens. Patricia sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by 2 lawyers in expensive suits. She didn't look at me once. Judge Reynolds presided, a man with a reputation for sniffing out nonsense a mile away. The HOA's attorney opened first, painting me as an unstable, aggressive man who endangered community safety. He played the clip video of me holding the shotgun. A few gasps filled the room. Then it was Jane's turn. She stood tall, confident, and cool as ice. "Your Honor," she began, "that video was deliberately edited. The defense will now show the uncut version." We rolled the footage. It clearly showed the HOA workers trespassing, ignoring warnings, and me never once raising the weapon, only holding it after repeated violations. Then she submitted the original property deed, my father's 1989 survey, and the notarized transfer records. Finally, she presented Patricia's financial statements, showing thousands of dollars rerouted to the Ocean Dunes Maintenance LLC, the shell company her brother-in-law owned. The courtroom murmured. Patricia's lawyer whispered something urgently, but she just stared straight ahead, her face pale. When Jane finished, you could hear a pin drop. Judge Reynolds cleared his throat. "Mrs. Benson, do you have anything to say regarding these financial documents?" Patricia opened her mouth, then closed it. "Given the evidence, this court finds the HOA's lawsuit baseless and malicious. Furthermore, I am ordering an investigation into the HOA's financial activities." Patricia's jaw clenched. "As for Mr. Lawson," he continued, "his property is hereby declared outside HOA jurisdiction. All claims, fines, and penalties are void. Court costs to be paid by the plaintiff." Boom. The gavel came down. It was over. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. People in the gallery clapped. Even the news reporters rushed out to call their editors. Patricia stormed out, her heels echoing like gunshots down the marble floor. That night, the beach was silent again. Not from tension, but peace. Eddie came by with beer. He said, "You did it, man," raising a bottle. Marty joined too, setting up his camera for one last shot. "So," he said, grinning, "what's next for you?" I looked at the ocean, the waves glowing under the moonlight. Maybe I'll get to enjoy the cabin again without the damn HOA breathing down my neck." We laughed. The storm had passed. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just my win. It was for every homeowner who ever got bullied by people who thought power came with a clipboard and a fake smile.
For days after the court ruling, I couldn't believe it was real. I'd walk outside every morning, breathe in the salt air, and just stand there, staring at the ocean, letting the sound of the waves erase months of stress that had built up inside me. The beach was mine again. No more warning letters, no more strangers measuring my fence line, no more HOA agents snooping around like they own the place. Just quiet. The kind my father always said was the sound of peace earned, not given. But the calm didn't last long. 2 days later, my phone started blowing up again, this time with news alerts. HOA president under investigation for fraud. Local HOA faces lawsuit from residents over misused funds. Patricia's world was collapsing. Apparently, once our case hit the news, more homeowners came forward, dozens of them, with receipts, messages, and proof of bogus charges. The district attorney's office had opened a criminal investigation. The Ocean Dunes HOA board voted to suspend all operations pending review. Patricia was forced to resign. And her brother-in-law's maintenance company? It vanished overnight. Jane stopped by one evening, papers in hand. She said, "Thought you'd like to see this." She handed me a letter. It was official. Notice of property exemption, parcel number 421A, legally confirmed as outside HOA jurisdiction in perpetuity. I let out a long breath and smiled. "That sounds like freedom on paper," I said. She laughed softly. "You've earned it. Most people would have caved long before it got this far." I looked out at the setting sun, golden light spilling. But something in me snapped when they tried to take what my father built. This cabin isn't just wood and nails. It's memories, it's family, and no committee of clipboard warriors is ever going to take that away from me. A few weeks later, Marty came back with his camera crew.
He wanted to film a final segment for his series, a closure episode titled "The Man Who Stood Up to the HOA and Won." We sat on the porch, microphones clipped, the ocean roaring behind us. "So, if you could say one thing to anyone dealing with an HOA nightmare, what would it be?" he asked. I thought about it for a moment. Then I said, "Don't let fear make you silent. They count on that. The moment you speak up, you take back your power." He nodded, smiling. "That's perfect." When the video went live, it hit over 1 million views in a week. People flooded the comments with stories, some heartbreaking, some inspiring, all of them about standing up for what's right. Life slowly returned to normal. I fixed the porch swing, repainted the shutters, even planted the flowers my father used to love, bright orange marigolds by the fence. Sometimes I'd still get visitors, neighbors, reporters, even random folks who'd seen the video and wanted to see the beach cabin that beat the HOA. I always told them the same thing. It's not about beating anyone. It's about reminding people that property rights still mean something, and that no one, not even an HOA, is above the law. Then, one evening, I got a letter, no return address. Inside was a single page. "You may have won this round, but the system always finds a way." No signature. I read it twice, folded it up, and tossed it into the fire. Because the truth was, it didn't scare me anymore. I'd already been through worse, and if the system ever came for me again, I'd be ready. Weeks later, after the investigations wrapped up, I took one last drive down the coastline. The old HOA sign had been taken down, the office shuttered. Patricia's house? For sale sign in the yard. Funny how power crumbles when people stop being afraid of it. I parked near the dunes, walked barefoot down to the surf, and let the cold water wash over my feet. For the first time in years, I felt completely free. When I think back on it now, it wasn't just about a cabin. It was about dignity. About knowing that no one can take what's rightfully yours if you've got the courage to stand your ground. The HOA came at me with papers, threats, and lies, but all it took to stop them was truth and persistence. I didn't need to be a lawyer or rich or powerful, just stubborn enough not to back down. Freedom isn't given, it's defended. Sometimes with words, sometimes with silence, sometimes with a shotgun in your hands on your own front porch. I hope my story reminds people that standing up doesn't make you the villain. It makes you alive.